Yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. I am so very glad to be here with you guys tonight. We have the second part of our workshop. So this part is about the Nawa deities. And before we start, I have a couple of reminders. First, generally, we tend to think about superior beings as gods and goddesses, but let's remember that these are not gods and goddesses. That's a term that was introduced by the Spaniards when they imposed their religion. I have called them deities here, but that's not all that accurate either, because that word was also coined somewhere else, I believe by Augustine of Hippo, and he coined it to describe something or someone godlike or with the attributes of a god. We also sometimes call them lords and ladies, again, not entirely accurate. Their title in Nahuatl is Nancing and Taxing. And we know that these are honorifics given to very important beings and people. So let's remember that these lords and ladies are embodiments of aspects or elements of nature or natural processes. So if you guys have any suggestions as to words that are closer to the meaning of nancing and taxing, well, you can let us know your suggestions, because we are always glad to leave this translation process open for everyone. So something else to keep in mind is that these deities have been in the culture for centuries, longer than that even, and their stories were passed down as oral tradition. And telling a story is a bit of an organic process. And what I mean by that is that it is never going to be the exact same way. And so if you go and look up these deities, you will find different versions of the stories. You may find a Maya version, an Aztec version, a Nawa version, and even within those cultures, you might find slightly different versions. So what we are learning here in these workshops and what we're going to learn today come from the stories that the elders so very generously have passed down to us in their storytelling. And these stories come from their grandparents. So again, this continues to be oral tradition. Yes, we have written them, but we are aware that there are many variations, and the storytelling is never exactly the same. Something else is that in some cases, I'll make a reference to the stories that are found in Mexico and in the way that they are told in Mexico. Mostly because over there, more codices and written documents are found, but also because we want to show the similarities and the differences. Now, with all of those reminders out of the way, we start with one of the deities that has managed to survive through time, repression, and invasion. In El Salvador, he is the only one that keeps his title. He is still called Taxing, and he is spoken about with more or less all of his divine attributes. All of the other lords and ladies were like diminished or were reduced to witches and spirits, or even evil spirits. I think you talked about this with Valerie yesterday as well. But in the case of taxing a Hegat, this didn't happen. So the invaders and their religion couldn't get rid of taxing a Hegat. The actor has says that it is his theory that they couldn't get rid of him because he is a part of nature. And this is my personal opinion, by the way, I wonder if another reason why they couldn't get rid of him is because he is the wind. And if you remember how the wind and breath are related, how the wind and breath, ihiyu, are so important for the Nawa spirituality. So ihiyu is breath, but it's also the voice, and they both have to do with the wind. So maybe taxing a Hegat is the voice of the Nawa culture and spirituality that couldn't be silenced by oppression. Now, in the documented images and writings about taxing a Hegat, he is described as having the head of a bird, a beak, but also teeth. On this one and on the previous slide, we have images that come from codices. And now let's hear what the elders have to say about taxing a Hegat.
Me han dicho mis abuelos que Don Norte es un hombre, él es espíritu, pero era un hombre enorme, grande, grande. Él tenía alas muy grandes, tenía cabeza de ave y él comía carne humano. Entonces él tenía grandes dientes, pero grandes dientes muy grandísimos, porque como es un animal y él es el que comía carne humana.
Isn't it amazing how taxing a Hegat is described to this day in the same way that he was depicted in the codices from so long ago? Remember, by the way, I forgot to tell you guys to remind you, if you have any comments or any questions or anything that you want to let us know, you can just open your microphones and tell us. So
What
we
is
continue.
is there an
Yes?
is there an Aztec counterpart to this particular deity?
I think it's a Hecatl.
Ehekato. Okay.
Thank you, Gabriela. You saved me there, because yeah, truly, I haven't studied in much detail the equivalents in all of the other cultures. So thank you so much, Gabriela, for that. Okay, so we continue now. One of the stories that the elders have told us, and those of you who have joined us to the Fridays tutoring sessions might have heard this story directly from the elders. So this story involves the Nancing that we see on our screen. She is Nancing Papalut, Lady Butterfly. She is the mother of Taxing and Hegat. And the story that the elders tell about her goes as this. There was a couple, a boyfriend and a girlfriend. The girlfriend was sort of like a princess. She was the daughter of a Tatuktiani. A Tatuktiani is something like a leader, something like a king. So the king decides to take her away to give her in marriage to someone else. And so she is taken across the sea to another land. The boyfriend, of course, is very distressed. He wants to go get his girlfriend back, but he has no means to travel across the sea. Then, the tunal of a dead person shows up to him. The young man, the boyfriend, previously had helped bury the body of a deceased person that he found. And so it is this person's tunal that appears to him to help him back. So the tunal tells the young man that he can ask Taksin Ehegat for help. And the tunal also tells the young man where to find Ehegat's home. So the young man goes, and when he knocks on the door, it is Ehegat's mom, Nancy Papalut, that opens that door. So the young man tells her his story and asks her for help in convincing her son to help him. Nancy Papalut agrees to intercede for him with her son, but she tells the young man that before she can do this, he has to hide under a large cooking pot because his son always returns really, as they say, hungry, both angry and hungry. And he also has a taste for human flesh. So the young man has to wait for Ehegat to have his meal and to rest before Nancy Papalut can intercede for him and before he can talk to Ehegat directly. The young man fits perfectly under the cooking pot because both Ehegat and Papalut are giants. So, of course, their kitchenware is also enormous. So, time passes by and Ehegat arrives home, and he immediately smells the scent of human flesh. And sniffing and snorting, he says, "It smells like human flesh here." His mother, Nancy Papalut, tells him that there is no human flesh there. And she gives him his meal and he tells him to rest. And once Taksin Ehegat is rested and fed, she intercedes for the young man. And that is when she takes the young man out of hiding and he is able to ask Taksin Ehegat for help. Eventually, Taksin Ehegat agrees to help the young man, but there is a catch. Taksin Ehegat says he is always hungry, but since they would be flying over the ocean, he won't have time to stop and hunt for meat. So the young man has to have enough meat to feed Ehegat through the journey. And if he happens to run out of meat, then Ehegat would eat him instead. The young man, he is desperate, right? So he agrees to Ehegat's conditions. And so he goes away for a while and prepares enough provisions to keep Ehegat fed. The story has a happy ending because the young man does not run out of meat and he is able to rescue his girlfriend from the unwanted marriage. What I want us to notice in this story is that we see that Nancy Papalut had a sort of an intercessory role. She talks to his son on behalf of humans. In El Salvador, she has more of a pacific role. In Mexico, because she has a counterpart in Mexico, Nancy Papalut over there is the lady of war. So she's pretty different over there. Over here, we know that she has this intercessory role. Now, you see the image on your screen is taken from a codex. And so now the elders, as far as I know, they have never seen them. So let's hear to the way they describe Nancy Papalut.
La mamá de Don Norte es una mujer, ella ya tiene alas, ella es una mariposa, tiene cara de mujer. También es espíritu, una anciana, con el pelo largo y casi arrastraba el pelo de la señora. Y ella nunca se veía peinada, toda la vida, el pelo bien alborotada. Así era, la señora era una anciana. Y tenía la cara también, cara de mujer, pero era bruja.
So it's pretty similar, right? The description Nancy Sixta gives of Nancy Papalut is basically as we see her in the picture. Something that came to mind when I was listening to Nancy Sixta talk about Nancy Papalut's hair and how it was messy. I was reminded of my grandmother and my great grandmother. Whenever they said that my hair was messy, they meant that I had let it down, that it was not braided. So I wonder if Nancy Sixta meant it in this way about Nancy Papalut. Because if you notice in the tutoring sessions, all of the Nancys, they always have their hair up. So maybe when Nancy Sixta says that her hair was always messy, she means that it is not braided, it is not up, but it falls, she says, all the way almost to the floor. And we see here that Nancy Papalut, her hair she has let it down, right? Something else, did you notice how Nancy Sixta says she was a witch? She says at the beginning that she is a woman, but she is a spirit. And then at the very end, she was a witch. This is what I mentioned in the beginning. Most of the lords and ladies have been reduced to spirits or evil spirits or witches. However, some aspects of them remain. Nancy Papalut's intercessory role remains embodied in the Virgen of Guadalupe. It is said that this invocation of the Virgin, in Mexico at least, took many of the characteristics of Nancy Papalut. And I don't know if you have heard, but sometimes the Virgin of Guadalupe is called Tonantzin. And that is our Nancy, right? Our lady. So it is said that she took many characteristics from Nancy Papalut. So maybe Nancy Papalut lives on in the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Something else interesting about Nancy Papalut is that she has the wings of a butterfly. And this is very nice. This is a really nice explanations that the ancestors have as to how taxing a hegat came about, because she, being a butterfly and having wings, her wings produce the wind, right? So she, with her wings, is the mother of the wind itself, so taxing a hegat. Now, remember, guys, if you have any comments, any questions, you just open your microphones.
So a question about this. I know in Honduras there's a version of the Virgin of Guadalupe that's their own sort of version of that. And then obviously Mexico has the Tonantzin or the Virgen de Guadalupe. in El Salvador, is this the closest that gets to what that reference might be? I'm not saying it's a literal direct version of it, but like there's not a special version for El Salvador. Is this the closest like version of that?
Yeah. Yes, I believe so. We also have, and actually the worship to Virgen de Guadalupe, to the Virgin, is very important here as well. In fact, this month is her celebration, I believe the 12th, and there is a church, there is a cathedral dedicated to the Virgin of Guadalupe. And let me tell you, the roads get closed because so many people go and see Virgen de Guadalupe. And I think that since she took the aspects of Nancy Papalut, especially her intercessory role, that is why this celebration, the Virgin of Guadalupe's celebration, is so important in the country as well. Something else is that many people in the country is named after the Virgin of Guadalupe as well. So I believe this is the way. I mean, nowadays we do not, or most people do not relate Nancy Papalut with the Virgin of Guadalupe, but let's say that she has some of those characteristics in her, even though most people have forgotten that's where she comes from. Did I answer your question, Charles?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes.
Okay, you're welcome. And thank you for that question. I think it was a very interesting question. Now, we were talking about how Nancy Papalut is the mother of Taksin Ehegat, so the mother of Mr. Win, as they call him as well. So let's remember that Ehegat is the only one that has kept his title of Taksin. He has resisted the attempts of being erased and diminished. And in fact, his worship lasted a very, very long time. It is only relatively recently, maybe about 80 to 100 years, that people stopped worshiping him through songs and rituals. Let's hear what the elders say about it.
Antes las señoras de Santo Domingo se reunían 25 personas, señoras, y se montaban sobre de una vara, ellos decían.
Sorry, guys, sorry.
Que a caballo ellas, allí carrera y carrera, en los lugares donde han sacado las siembras, y cantaban. Decían ellos, Antitiktacuyatipampanyejegat. Y decían, Guindindin, 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 Anwitstepejegat, Guindindin, Guindindin, Anwitstepejegat. Dejaron de cantarle porque sucedió algo, una señora, como usaban caites, y ella así andaban y se resbaló una señora y le traspasó un tronco del maicillo que han dejado, porque eso se corta y queda un tronco. Y entonces la señora allí murió. Eso fue el miedo y dejaron de cantarle a Don Norte.
Just let me look at some of the comments here. Okay. Okay, so Nancy Sixta in her telling of the worship that people gave to taxing a hegat, she said they used to say, "Antiu titacuigat y pampane hegat." So here she says, today we're going to sing about a hegat. And then this song, the top part, winding ding, that is just like singing, like when we say la 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 la, that is something similar. So it doesn't say nothing much. It's just the sound to make it more pleasant. And then, and with stepehegat, here it says, today the breeze or the wind from the mountain is coming. So you see, Nancy makes reference to the fact that they used to do this kind of recently. And in her story, she mostly mentioned women. And I think it is pretty sad, the tragedy that occurred that made people afraid to continue singing these songs and worshiping a Hegat. Why they would be afraid to continue. Why would they be afraid to continue with this practice? Since Nancy Sixta in other moments, when she tells this story, she says that when people saw that the lady was hurt, some of them went to find help. But remember that they were in the fields. They were far away from people, for one. And another thing is that in Huitzapan, in Santo Domingo de Guzman, they don't have a hospital in the town. They don't have a clinic in the town. So they have to take people to Sonsonate, to the city, to be able to see a doctor. So this lady pretty much bled on the fields because they were too far away from help. And even if they had been at the center of the town, maybe the end result would have been the same because hospitals are quite far away. But you see that Hegat continued and continues even to our day. And his influence, we're going to talk about taxing a Hegat a lot in this workshop because he's one of the most important and the one that still keeps his status as a taxing. So his influence is in the language still. Here we have an example. Hegat is the Lord of the Wind, right? His name is also translated as wind or the wind. And in the community, they say Pewawitsne Hegat. On your screen, you see the direct translation, so word by word. And sorry guys. And if we study the structure of the sentence, we discover that the wind receives attributes of a living being. So in Nahuatl, we say, Nahaniwitz, I come. Tahatiwitz, you come. Yahawitz, or just witz, he or she comes. And in our example, you can see there that we are using the third person singular here, wits. So we are talking about he or she. And who is that he? Well, that he is taxing a Hegat. So we are saying, when we are thinking in Nahuatl, when we are thinking that we feel the wind, we do not say it is windy. We would say pewawits nehegat. Taxing hegat starts to come, or he is coming this way. So he is still present in the language. And we have another example. In Nahuatl, we do not have a single term to talk about dust devils. What we do in Nahuatl is that we describe them and we say, Nehegat muyawalua wantehku. If you see the word here, muyawalua, the mu that you see at the beginning shows it is a reflexive. So that is something that the subject of the sentence does to themselves. In this case, the wind or taxing hegat is turning himself into a yagual that is like a spiral, and he is climbing. So you see, the wind is given the attributes of a living being. And this shows, once again, that in the language, the memory of Taksin Hegat as a living, sentient being remains. And we have another example. It says, Ahuiak puputuga nehiu nehegat. Delicious smells the breath of the wind. That is, again, a direct translation word by word in the same order as it is said in Nahuatl. It would probably be more natural to say the breath of the wind is pleasant. That is what we are trying to say with that sentence. And as we learn in another workshop, ihiyu is our particular scent and it is our breath as well. This phrase is said whenever you feel a pleasant smell that reminds you of something or someone you know or care about, but that something or that someone is nowhere near you, and yet you feel their scent. In the Nawa culture, when this happens, it is explained by saying that it is a hegat, it is taxing a hegat that was walking where you were, that was going by, and he exhaled around you, and so you were able to perceive the pleasant aroma of his breath. Another clue of taxing a hegat's status as a lord enduring through time and invasion that we have in the language is in this very phrase. You see that we talk about a hegat's, we talk about his, and in the Nawa culture, only living beings have ihiyu. So if a hegat has ihiyu that we can still feel to our day, then he is thought of as a sentient living being endures. A hegat also has a bit of a feisty side. Every year, here in the skies of El Salvador, he fights with taxing taluk, which is before we only had this study in Spanish, and I really wanted you guys to get to hear the say about this battle. So here it goes. Legend has it that every guys get ready to fight an epic battle. The great fight between Taksin and Hegat, the Lord of the Wind, and Taksin Taluk, the Lord of the Rain. These powerful spirits have been friends for centuries, but when October arrives, something different happens. Taksin and Hegat starts to feel trapped because Taluk, the storm and the Guyanguat have taken over the weather for several months of the year, so he wants to be free again. He wants to roam through the land without limits, and so the great battle starts. During the whole year, Taluk, the Lord of the Rain, has ruled over the sky. He has been generous, sending his water droplets into the river and fields. He has filled the rivers and has helped the corn and beans to grow strong. But when October arrives, Taksin Hegat starts feeling that his turn has arrived. He wants to run between the trees, to dance in the mountains, and whistle in the ravines. It is said that a day in October, while Taluk sleeps peacefully on his clouds, Taksin Hegat surprises him. He creeps in and blows hard. And Taluk's clouds start moving away, and the raindrops fall as if Taksin Taluk is afraid. Taluk wakes up, and when he sees his friend, the wind, he shouts, Taksin Hegat, it's not your turn yet. I still have to care for the earth with my rain. But Taksin Hegat, stubborn and brave, insists, it's time that I run through the fields again. Let me through, Taluk. And he blows even harder, and the trees bend to his might. The dust blows from the path, and the ocean waves dance with the winds. The children in El Salvador look up at the sky and play with their kites and watch the clouds moving quickly as if they are running away. Sometimes Taksin Taluk manages to return and covers the earth with a gentle blanket of rain. But Taksin Hegat, determined to be free, returns even stronger, rumbling across the sky, lifting the leaves and making the dust devils spin on the roads. The elders say that this battle lasts until Taluk accepts defeat and lives for a while. That's the only way that Taksin Hegat is left free to run and to give life to the upcoming summer. Whenever you hear the wind blowing and see the clouds fleeing, remember it's the great battle between Taksin Hegat and Taksin Taluk. Have you ever heard about this story? Like your family members, your grandparents, your parents, did they ever tell you about this story?
No, that's the first time I've heard this story.
I see. So, same as you, I learned about this story here at an H. Safora school. However, and once talking with Tamachtiani, and that is when he shared this story. I was telling him, well, actually the group, that my grandma, whenever it was raining and we didn't want rain, she would tell us, bichos, how we say in Spanish, right? So, children, blow so that the rain goes away. And she would do it, like she would start like blowing up at the sky, because she said that that was the way to send the rain away. And this is pretty much what happens in this story. Like the wind blows all of the clouds and Taluk away. In the country, in El Salvador, since we only have two seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. Typically, the winter or the rainy season ends somewhere around the end of September and the beginning of October. And that's when we have our famous vientos de octubre, so the October winds. And it is usually a very windy month. It makes it pretty cold early in the morning and at night. Well, I have to say, it makes it pretty cold for us that live here in El Salvador, um, because this phenomena in October actually marks the beginning of summer. So the study that we just heard is a bit of an explanation for this windy month. Something else I want to tell you about the story is that it is an adaptation made by Tamaxiani Hector. So it is not like an official version because, as you know, there is no official version. This comes from all of the times that the elders, many of them, had talked about this story. So again, this is not an official version because it
I
is
like your
oral.
narration though, with the vocal effects and everything. It was really fun.
Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. I was so very nervous doing this, but I really wanted you guys to hear the story and not just to read the text. Um, okay, so as I was telling you, this is oral tradition, but if you want to know another version, you can read the book Salco. And we have this book on our website, olnawa.com, and you can download it for free. The only thing is that this book only has a Spanish edition, so it is not available in English. But if you want, you can download it for free from our website. Now, something else that a Hegad has earthquakes. By the way, if you guys stop being able to see my screen, or if you stop hearing me, please let me know, because I just saw this message here that my connection is unstable. So let me know if something happens. So, talking about earthquakes, this is a very common natural phenomena here in El Salvador. And I remember that when I was little, whenever we had an earthquake, my mother used to tell my brother and I not to be afraid. It was just the seasons changing. And so we just heard a story in which when the seasons change, Taksin Ehegad and Taksin Taluk fight an epic battle. Well, the elders say Ehegad also has to do with earthquakes. Some elders also say that earthquakes have to do with the arbolarios, the huracaneros, the storm makers. And we're going to hear both versions of this story. The first one, told by Nancy Sixta, has to do with the storm makers.
Los niños huracaneros, ellos estaban sueltos. Según la palabra, ellos estaban sueltos. Pero como no obedecieron, ellos muy malcriados, porque cada ratito temblaba, pero temblaba porque ellos estaban sueltos. Ya eran hombres. Entonces, como ellos eran dos, quizás ellos de gusto sentían, para ellos era gusto andar temblar y temblar la tierra, porque temblaba mucho. Entonces, vino otra vez, los encadenaron, los agarraron y los encadenaron porque eran desobedientes. Por eso es que ya no tembló demasiado como ellos querían, que la tierra solo temblando pasaba. Ahora tiembla, pero solo cuando Dios quiere que tiembla. Ellos están sumergidos a lo que les ordenaron.
So,
Ahora ellos
and the
están
first
encadenados
part
y no pueden hacer
of
más
this
lo que ellos
workshop
quieran
that you
hacer.
had yesterday with Valerie, she told you about Nawa and how in her second life she found twins inside the calabash fruit and how these twins were the first storm makers. Well, in this version, they also like to make the earth tremble with their power over the weather. Something else you talked about yesterday was about syncretism. And today we have been learning that many Nawa deities have been reduced to witches and evil spirits, and this was encouraged, often violently, in order to make the Christian God superior to the native deities. And you see that in this story, the footprint of this process can be seen. Where, when Nancy says that nowadays it's God, and she's referring to the Christian God. So it's God that has control over the earthquakes. But these divine or powerful beings are still known throughout Mesoamerica. In El Salvador, in Nahuatl from Huitzapan, we call them arbolarios. In the Izalco variant, they call them atepegua. And this one is pretty curious because they are pretty much named after their role. Atepegua is the verb to wet someone by throwing or putting water on them. So that's what atepegua means. And this is pretty much what they do. They throw water on people, making it rain. Arbolarios in Nicaragua are called manawas. In Mexico, they are called tlaloques. And in some cultures, north of the continent, they are called thunderbirds. So you see, they are known pretty much everywhere. Now we're going a version from Nancy Fidelina. Remember, if you have any comments or questions, you can open your microphones and let us know. Okay, so let's listen to what Nancy Fidelina has to say.
Que antes decían las señoras que mucho llovía, la tierra se ablanda y como antes solo de horcones, donde llovía, venía el norte, después del norte, empieza a temblar la tierra y caen las casas. Y los que están así
Okay, Nancy here is talking about the ground being saturated with water after 6 months of the rainy season. And she says, then the wind comes when the season changes. And this is when the Hega produces an earthquake. As we saw in a previous slide, when it is winter, it's Taluk who reigns. Maybe by the time a Hega gets impatient to return, as he tries to return, he makes the earth quake. And you might be asking yourselves, if a Hegat returns with summer, it means that in winter he is gone. But how about the wind when it rains? Well, that wind that accompanies the rain is not produced by a Hegat. That wind is produced by the storm makers. Now, we're going to listen to another recording this one is in Nahuatl.
Inat ne chuchuletket ne tutego ya hata su kualani tua pero al tuktia neat pal wetsi susul pewa ne testiquini ne ujustot un ne akal nemit ne kune ne tigusti orias ne gantipanot gampewa chiliga ne tal gune wetsi ne gaskal Tayuwa tiagas yaugita hasta gantatwias ne tahtagamets igual que tiaugistía ne mismigini palitugas gaktuka inatga gan pewate ne susurneat hueche un ticuini ne cayigasco kunis pewa ichiliga netal que man susur ichiliga hueche ne gascal un tayahuele tigistia datka sa tainaga tinemit ya gistet ne mismigine gitugat.
Okay, so in this one, Nancy starts by telling us that God, she says Tutegu, so God, our Father, is not mad at us when there are earthquakes. She says that when it rains a lot, the earth gets softened, gets saturated by water. And so again, when the wind comes, it is when earthquakes happen. There at the end, she says once again that sometimes the houses fall down and people perish, and we all have to help one another when that happens. I believe she's talking about this because we have had pretty bad and well, I think we all that have lived through one can remember the devastating consequences they tend to have in the country, sometimes particularly in the countryside. So, in El Salvador, in the Nawa culture, it is taxing a hegat or the storm makers that cause the earthquakes. In other places, in Mexico, for example, they call him or they have this deity called Tepeyolu, Tepeyolotl in Nahuatl, who causes the earthquakes. In the Nawa stories that we have here in El Salvador, Tepeyulu, the Lord of the Mountain, is only mentioned in the opossum in the fire story. In that story, it says that Tepeyulu used to be the only one with access to fire, and it is thanks to the brave opossum that humans get to have fire. So that is all that remains of Tepeyulu in El Salvador. We do not know if, like in Mexico, he might also have been the cause of some of the earthquakes. But nowadays, we in the stories we only have these two deities, these two types of beings that cause earthquakes, either a hegat or the arbolarios. And now we move on. Others have been reduced or forgotten. And this taxing is the sun. His name was Tonatiuh, and it comes from the Nahuatl words Tunal and Tiut. And so that is sacred sun or the Lord's sun. His stories didn't make it to our time, but we can find clues that he was one of the deities in El Salvador through the language. So we're going to look at one of them. Here in the example, we have a phrase. It says, Munamiktia nemasat. The deer is getting married. But you might ask, what does that have to do with the sun? Well, in Nawa, a sun shower is called Munamiktia nemasat. And this phrase is part of a larger one. And the larger phrase says, Tachia netunal wangimagat anga munamiktia nemasat. This sentence starts with a verb, the verb tachia. In this context, we usually translate tachia, because we're talking about the sun, as shining or shines. However, tachia is also the ability to see. Tachia is to see something or someone. So you can say, Nahani tachia, I see. Tahati tachia, you see. Yaha tachia, he sees. Or you could say just tachia because you can omit the subject in Nahuatl. So tachia, he sees. So if the sun has the ability to tachia, he can see, it means he is given the attributes of a living sentient being. So in this phrase, we find the vestiges of two lords. In Tachia Netunal, he, the sun, sees, we find one, we find Tonatiuh. And then we have another lord here, Gimaga At. It says, this is said of Taluk, Gimaga At. We translate it as it rains, but it literally means he gives water. And so the sentence would say, the sun sees and Taluk gives water. Maybe the deer is getting married. And maybe you are thinking, but that is pretty flimsy evidence. So I have another clue here for you guys. This clue has been documented in the book Cuscatlán Típico, written by María de Barata. By the way, you can also download this book for free on our website. Once again, I believe that there is only a Spanish version of this book. So, María de Barata is not the author of this song. She just recorded it in her book and she sang it with the national chorus circa 1930. So she's not the author. I am emphasizing this because some people believe that she is the author, but that is not true. This is from the Nawa people. So the song is called Gangalagitunal, and it is a song for the sun. This song has also been documented in other places, like in Mexico. In fact, you can go and find it in YouTube. It is there, the Mexican version that is in the Nahuatl language. Back in the day, this song used to be taught in schools. And many people of older generations remember having learned the song, even if they never learned Nahuatl, but they recognize the song when they hear it. Something else is that you can also find versions of this song with a lively rhythm. In cumbia version, for example. But this is kind of disrespectful for the Nawa culture, since this, more than a song, it is a lament. It used to be sung when it was cloudy and rainy and the sun wasn't seen for days. It was also sung when the sun was setting. In the book Cuscatlán Típico, the author says that in Izalco, when they sung this song, as the sun was setting, the mood was somber. It seemed like people were in mourning. And you might be thinking, isn't that a bit of another reaction? Feeling that sad, feeling in mourning because the sun is setting? But let's remember that in the communities, some even as recently as 40 years ago, they didn't have electricity. So they only have the sun as a source of illumination. All of their activities had to be done during the day or they were left in the dark. And though there were candles and gas lanterns, they do not provide the same light as the sun and nowadays electricity. So this context can give us a clue as to why they got so sad and somber when they couldn't see the sun. And this also tells us why it is kind of disrespectful to have these lively versions that are used for people to dance, because this is something sad and they are turning it into something to dance, probably because they do not know the language, they do not know what it means, they do not know where it comes from. So now in the workshop on Tuesday, they actually sung this song with Tamashani Hector, but I'm not going to subject you guys to my singing voice. I'm so bad at it. But we can read it together and we will try to translate it. I am going to read one of the lines and together we're going to see what it says. Those of you who have been with us in the regular courses already know some words and some verbs. And those of you who are new with us, you also know some words because this month we have been learning some of them. So if you know a word, don't be afraid to be wrong. Just tell me. So first line. Gangalagi tunal, tutegu, nechgugua, nechgugua. I know everyone knows what tunal means. Can anyone tell me?
Your spirit?
Yes, it can be your spirit, but it can be something else as well when it doesn't have a
Sun.
possessive.
It's the sun.
Yes, that is correct. So, Gangalagi tunal, it says, when the sun sets or when the sun leaves or when the sun exits, and we have tutegu. So what is tutegu? Do you guys remember?
Our Father.
Yes,
Our
that
Father.
is correct. Yes. So the song says, when the sun sets, our Father, it hurts me, it hurts me. Next line. Gangalagitunal nuyulu. Ngia nemitunal tit. So again, you know what tunal means?
Sun.
Yes. So we already know Gangalagitunal. What does this say?
When the sun sets.
Yes. And we have nuyulu.
My
So
heart.
you remember what nuyulu is? Yes, my heart. Now we have here a tunal tit. Do you remember what tunal tit means? Tesu? Maybe as tunal first. So just tunal?
Sun.
Sun.
Yes. Okay, so this line, when the sun sets, my heart,
Tunal.
the,
Oh.
yes, tunal tit.
I was just going to say that I know that teeth is fire.
Yes, you were correct. So, tunal tit, the fire of the sun is dying now. Now we have more clues to know the next line. Let's go with tunal tit. What is that?
The sun's fire. Or fire.
Yes.
Sun.
Yeah, and here we have again the sun. So it says metznegi nemi, metznegi, tunaltit, tunalmashu. Here, he is loving you, he loves you, fire of the sun, don't go. So we are asking the sun to stay. And then the last line, nuyulu chuga, tunaltit, tunalmashu. So, who wants to venture and tell me what this line says?
My heart cries. The sun's fire, the sun's fire, the sun's fire. Asking it to go. Mashu, go well.
To not go.
Oh, to not go.
Yeah.
Oh, ma.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, thank you. Well done. So my heart cries, and the sun's fire or fire of the sun, don't go. And the last line, mashutit, yahkia, tunal. So don't go fire. He has left sun. So this is the lament that the ancestors used to sing when they how important the sun. If you see here, they called him Tutegu, our father. The same way that they called the Christian God nowadays. They call him Tutegu. So we can infer that Tonatiuh, or the sun, was as important for the ancestors as Taxing-Hegad, as Nanahuatzin, and all of the other deities. And now we are going to talk about the scariest being in the Salvadoran Nawa mythology. He's called the Tzitzimit or the Sisimite. In Mexico, he is the deity of fear. And in El Salvador, he also represents fear. Some elders say that the Tzitzimit looks like a monkey. Others say that he is shapeless, like a blob, but they all say that he is really, truly scary. I think that this deity is a trickster deity because he appears to people and he tricks them. He has a certain ability to take over people's mind and to control their actions. One of the stories about the Tzitzimit says that a man was in the fields at noon. So imagine he can show up at noon So at noon, this man is waiting for his wife to bring him his lunch. So the man sees his wife approaching, but what he doesn't know is that it is actually the tzitzimit that has shape-shifted to look like the man's wife. So, the tzitzimit, as the man's wife, gives the man his lunch. And as the man eats, he starts feeling a funny movement in his mouth. And so he spits his food and he realizes that the rice he is eating is actually a bunch of maggots. And though he wants to stop, he doesn't want to chew that rice that is actually maggots. He doesn't want to eat it. He is unable to do so because the tzitzimit has taken control over his body. Other stories say that he tricks people into eating other disgusting things like dead animals, dirt, and maggots, as we just heard. So he is not only feared because he is a trickster, because he can shapeshift, because he can take over your mind and your body, but he is also feared because he can do the worst thing, and that is he can steal your tunal. And this is so very worrisome because it's basically a death sentence. If you have seen the tzitzimit, if he has shown up to you, you basically only get 3 days to live. And this is because he steals your tunal. And so without your tunal, we cannot stay alive. So people that have seen him get sick and die. The Nawa culture explains eclipses as the attempt from the tzitzimit to eat the sun or the moon. The elders talk about the tzitzimit in plural. So they say there are many of them. And when they get together and try to eat the sun or the moon, they make it dark. And so this is also the reason why in the Nawa culture, eclipses are scary events. And it is recommended that you stay at home. In the country, there are a few places named after the tzitzimit. One of the most important ones is in the town of Apastepeque in San Vicente. There is a place called the Ravine of the Sisimite. And if you Google that place, you will find out that is a place where the largest fossils in the country have been found. And when Tamasiani Hector told the elders about fossils, like the largest ones in the country, having been found in this ravine that is called after the Tzitzimit, they said that maybe the Tzitzimit's home was in that ravine, and that was where he took the animals that he hunted to eat, and therefore he had left all of those bones in there. So I found it very curious and very interesting that they have this explanation for the fossils found in that ravine. Of the images on your screen, this one is just to illustrate. This is nothing official, just to give you an idea. But this is an illustration in the Magliavecchiano Codex. So there's a picture of the tzitzimit. And now let's hear what the elders say about the tzitzimit.
Los sisimitres también son espíritus. Ellos tienen un cuerpecito, son muy pequeños, negritos, y también tienen la cara como la cara de una bestia. Ellos tienen su sombrero negro también, como son ellos. Tienen la figura como un hombre, pero son espíritus también. Ellos pueden caminar, ellos asustan a las personas, según lo que me han contado mis abuelos.
Okay, let me see. I have some comments, I believe. Okay, so once again, you see that these deities have been reduced to spirits or to evil spirits, but still in the culture, their memory at least survives. So have you guys heard about the tzitzimit before?
No, but it looks terrifying.
Yes, they
Yeah,
are.
I've only heard of the Aztec version, which apparently they're presented as star deities, for lack of a better word.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. It's interesting to know that you know of the manifestation in another culture, and to see that, well, we have that one over here as well, and he has survived through time. So here we have we're going to learn about other deities. These ones have been found in Igualtepeque, Metapán, in Santa Ana. They are in a lake, the Ouija Lake. And unfortunately, this is one of the most unprotected and therefore vulnerable archaeological places in the country. The people of the town say that in summer, when the water of the lake recedes, people back their pickup trucks to the edge of the water and remove the rocks with petroglyphs. Can you imagine how much information has been lost this way? The community is organizing to demand the government does something to protect this site. But so far, nothing has been done. And this careless attitude is not even an isolated event. It happens a lot. There is another important historical and archaeological site in a place called Tacuzcalco. But, by the way, this place was or is important because a battle happened here. A battle between the Spaniards, the Tlaxcalans, and the people of Cuscatan. And if I'm not mistaken, this is also the place where Pedro de Alvarado got hurt. But even though this is a very important place, when construction companies wanted to build in that place, the permits were given. So now we have construction in that important place. So it wasn't preserved. Another example of this, most recently, protected natural reserve called El Playón, and that is in Opico, where you could find volcanic rocks. And let me tell you, you could be fined or even put in jail if you dare to remove the volcanic rocks in that place. But now the powers that be have given permits to build houses. And this is a gated community. Yes, it is true. Not the whole site has been used for construction, but even if a part of it has been taken over, that is not right. And I don't know if you have heard, but another protected place, the forest El Espino, is also being threatened because instead of having a forest that is very useful, right, to the people, they want to build a convention center. So again, it is not actually surprising to know that the, let's say, small legacy that remains is dwindling of things here in the country. Right, is to show you what is left of the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl. In our country, none of Quetzalcoatl's stories remain, but he has been immortalized in stone. In Igualtepeque, we have petroglyphs with his image, a serpent with feathers. Here we have some more petroglyphs where we can see Quetzalcoatl. And another one, I believe this one is in the National Museum of Anthropology, so at least this one is, let's say, safe. Now, here we have a video with a Mexican version of Quetzalcoatl. I left this one here. This one is only available in Spanish, but if any of you want to watch it, I can send it to you later. In this version, the version Spanish, three main characters are mentioned. Two brothers, Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, and also Zipacti is mentioned. In the version that we're going to watch, only one of the brothers and Zipacti are mentioned, but what happens is pretty much the same.
In the beginning there was chaos, a boundless sea, and a monster unlike any other. Chipactli, the primordial beast, a nightmare of snapping jaws, endless hunger, and writhing limbs. Its body was chaos incarnate. Every part of Chipactli was alive, and every joint was a mouth ready to bite. It floated endlessly through the void, a living storm of teeth and terror. But from this chaos, the gods desired creation, to build a world. They needed to tame the beast. Tezcatlipoca sacrificed his own foot to lure Chipactli, and in that moment, the gods struck. They tore the monster apart, not to destroy, but to shape. From Chipactli's body, they formed the earth. Its bones became the land, its breath the wind, its blood the seas. Even now, the earth trembles, as if the beast still stirs beneath our feet. Subscribe to Myth Bites, where dark legends and
Okay, give me a sec. So why did I show you that video if that version is not the version from El Salvador? Well, as I mentioned before, the stories of Quetzalcoatl have been lost in the country. He has been forgotten, and so we don't have that, right? However, as I also also mentioned before, he was immortalized in stone. And these stones help us infer that in Guscatan they also believed in the same creation story. How? How do we know that? Because in the stones you are looking at right now, we can see the monster, we can see Sipakti, this one here, and we can also see the foot, I believe it's this one, and we see two people. This is one, and this is the one with that kills Sipakti. And so in the country, we only have the names of Sipakti and Quetzalcoatl. The other brother, we do not know, we do not have his name, how it would have been in the Salvadoran Nahuatl. So his name has been lost, but he is not completely lost because we have them in stone. And so this creation myth can be found in so many Mesoamerican cultures. But something that we find very interesting is that we have stories similar in other places of the world. How come? Because they say the world started covered in water. And we have the same thing in the Nawa story. We have them in El Popol Vuh as well. In El Popol Vuh, by the way, the two brothers are called Unapu and Ishbalanque. And the stories are pretty much the same. Some details change because in a version there is Tezcatlipoca not sacrificing his foot, but Sipakti biting it off. But in the end, they always manage to kill the monster and create life. I mentioned that some of these stones have been lost, and some of them are in the Anthropology Museum. Now, there is something that I think I have to tell you, and that is that in the little name tags that they have in the museum for these stories and stones, and the museum guides, they use the names in Nahuatl, in the Mexican language, not in the Nahuatl, the Salvadoran version. And that is pretty sad, because we are not giving them their proper Gusgatan name. With the students who take the workshop in Spanish on Tuesday, there was an idea that maybe we should write a letter to the museum and, to gather signatures to ask that these deities are given their proper Nahuatl name. We'll see what happens with that, if we can actually manage to gather the signatures and change this part, and if we manage to give them their proper name. Oh, sorry.
Is there
Yeah.
because that's a good museum, the Cultural and Anthropology Museum. Do they is the language, because I know we're studying a certain dialect of it, but is there a in the whole country of El Salvador desire to have more accurate names, or is it not?
Not really. Not really. The thing is that usually, in the academic world, they learn from the Nahuatl language, right? And also, another thing that happens is that these learned people, these scholars, they do not approach the communities, the actual people that speak the Nahuatl language. So, since there is this separation, um, they probably do not even know better that they are not giving them their proper name. And we have a bit of a battle, let's say, a bit of, I don't know, a purpose in Timomachtican Nahuatl, and that is for people, for everyone to know that we are not called pipiles. So, because here we are told we are pipiles, right? And that is written in books, in studies. Scholars say that we are pipiles, but that is not true. And I believe this keeps being learned and taught because they are far from the communities, from the actual indigenous people. And this is another reason why we have this image on our screen. This is another archaeological site, and this is within a national park. It is called Piedra Sellada or sealed stone. It has petroglyphs, different images, but this site too is unprotected. Anyone can go and touch it. People even carve their names on it, and in places it has graffiti. So we have story, we have indigenous people, we have a rich legacy. However, these places, our people are left unprotected. And in schools, there is no unit, there is no subject, there is not even a topic where our children are taught about the Nawa people and the Nawa language. So it is not surprising that people will also have a careless attitude towards these important stones with petroglyphs because they simply don't know what they mean, what they represent. But we, as Timomachtican Nahuatl and Neichan Safaro School, want to not only teach about the stories, but also to create or help create a bond between our students, between you guys and the elders and the indigenous communities that just like the unprotected archaeological sites have been historically overlooked. So we want to build those bridges so that so that the proper names of the deities, of the people, of the language can be known. So now it is your turn. Do you have any thoughts on tonight's workshop? Anything you would like to share?
I was thinking like just like how some of us were doing reels to help fundraise for the elders for the holiday celebration. I was also thinking like what if some of us could also like try to help make similar appeals, like to spread the word that to use the proper names. Just for example.
Yes, yes. And thank you so much for bringing that up. That is actually one of the things that Timomachtigan Nawa does, right? We are the largest library, digital library, because we share about these things. And I think it would be really nice if you guys, if our students could also participate in creating this content. Maybe we could bring this idea to Tamashtiani, and as we did with the reels for the fundraising, we can also make some other content to make people aware of these things. Thank you, Gabriela. Anyone else?
I
Oh.
would say that's a great idea. And the thing about the reels is they're really awkward, but the more you do them, the easier they get, and we should make more.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. Let's make more. Anyone else?
I just shared in the comments here, I just shared an article that has some archaeological finds of some pottery that have been found in El Salvador. And one of them, they claim that this is a feathered serpent motif on the bottom of this container. So just in the comments there, if people want to check it out.
Thank you, Zach. I find the things that you share with us in the groups always very interesting. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Okay, so if there are no other comments, I want you to remember that this was our last workshop, but we still have the tutoring session on Friday. We will have the opportunity there on Friday, tomorrow, to interact with the elders. So if you have any more questions on the stories, you or any topic that we study, you can ask the elders on Friday. Or also, if you would like to hear one of the stories live from the elders' mouths, you can let us know in the group so we can tell the elders which stories to prepare and so that they can tell them to you guys on Friday. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. See you Friday. Nawa.
Nawa.
Nawa, Payush.
Shawa.
Ayushu,
Telat ka.
Kira, Jawa.
Telat ka.